Welcome to the house I paid for, brick by brick, yet I am the only one banned from walking through its front door on Christmas Eve. I am currently staring at a glowing laptop screen that confirms the absolute freeze on my family's entire financial lifeline. 48 hours ago, my father sent me a text message that read, "Do not come. Christmas is going to be better without you." My younger sister, Chloe, immediately followed up with, "You are just going to make everything awkward. Stay there." They had no idea that the awkwardness they were talking about was the exact same person quietly funding their electricity, their car insurance, and the impending mortgage payment on their beautiful California home. My name is Ava. I am 28 years old, a petty officer in the United States Coast Guard, stationed in the brutal, freezing waters of Alaska. I have spent the last decade pulling strangers out of stormy oceans, but I completely forgot to save myself from a family that treated me like nothing more than a human ATM. To understand how we got to this freezing point, you have to understand the geography of my life. I was stationed in Kodiak, Alaska. My days were filled with biting winds, heavy survival gear, and the constant, nerve-wracking adrenaline of search and rescue missions. Meanwhile, my family lived in sun-drenched Orange County, California, sustaining a lifestyle they absolutely could not afford on their own. For 4 years, I had not seen them in person. Not because I did not want to, but because crossing thousands of miles just to feel like an unwanted ghost in my own childhood home is an exhausting exercise. Still, this year, I allowed myself to be dangerously naive. I let myself hope. Being in the military means you are trained to assess risks, to look for the structural weaknesses in any given situation. You would think someone trained in survival would know better than to bet on people who consistently let her down. But before I am a Coast Guardsman, I am human. And humans crave a place at the table. When my commanding officer finally approved my December leave, I felt a genuine rush of joy. It was going to be my first Christmas at home since I enlisted. I pictured my mother tearing up when I walked through the door. I pictured my dad handing me a beer without making a passive-aggressive comment about my career choices. I even imagined Chloe, for once in her life, asking how my deployment was instead of immediately complaining about her maxed-out credit cards. I bought the expensive, non-refundable plane ticket. I texted my mother, "Leave approved. Coming home for Christmas. I cannot wait to see you guys." Her reply? Not a single word of excitement, just a generic thumbs-up reaction. I tried not to overthink it. I really did. I spent the next 12 days packing my bags and buying thoughtful gifts, wrapping myself in the warm delusion that this time would be different, that I would be coming back to a loving home, not the heavy, suffocating tension that always floated in the air whenever I was in the room. Then came a Tuesday afternoon. I was sitting in the base mess hall, chewing on a dry protein bar while a blizzard held outside the window. My phone buzzed against the metal table. It was my dad. "Christmas is going to be better without you. Do not come." I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. 2 minutes later, Chloe's text chimed in. "You just make everything awkward. Better if you do not show up." That second message felt like a physical blow to the ribs. Not because Chloe had ever been warm to me, but because it sounded exactly like a text you send to a toxic ex-boyfriend, not the older sister who has been quietly keeping a roof over your head. I did not argue. I did not ask why. I typed a single word, "Understood." I wish I could tell you that I felt nothing, that my military training kicked in and I easily compartmentalized the pain. But that would be a lie. It hurt. It was a quiet, deeply hollow ache. The kind where you feel something shift inside your chest and you know it is never, ever going back to the way it was. But as the evening wore on, the grief began to evaporate, leaving behind something much colder and far more dangerous. Clarity. Absolute, unfiltered clarity. That night, sitting alone in my freezing barracks, I opened my laptop. It was time to look at the numbers. It was time to log into every single billing portal, every shared account, and every automated service where my name was quietly keeping their California dream afloat while I was left out in the cold. Click. Cancel automatic payment. That was the sound of the California electric bill vanishing from my checking account. Click. Revoke authorized user. That was Chloe's shiny platinum credit card, The one she used to buy iced lattes and designer handbags, instantly turning into a useless piece of plastic. Click. Terminate recurring transfer. That was the heavy one. The mortgage contribution. Every month, on the first of the month, a massive chunk of my Coast Guard salary would vanish into the ether to ensure my parents kept their precious suburban house. They were not my landlords, and my name was nowhere on that deed. But for the last 3 years, I had been the silent, unacknowledged pillar keeping their roof from caving in. Sitting in the dim light of my Alaskan barracks, watching those confirmation screens pop up one by one, a strange sensation washed over me. I was not angry anymore. I was surgically precise. I was treating my family exactly the way I was trained to treat a sinking vessel, cut the dead weight to save the ship. To understand how a daughter becomes a human checkbook, you have to look at how the foundation was poured. I do not remember the exact moment I realized I was the outsider in my own bloodline. There was no grand cinematic argument. It was a slow, agonizing drip of small moments. I was 8 years old when Chloe was born. My parents treated her arrival like the second coming. My dad, Richard, a man who believed volume equaled authority, called her the blessing of the house. It always made me wonder what that made me. The rough draft? The practice round? I was a quiet kid. I got straight A's, I kept my room spotless, and I never caused trouble. But in my family, not causing trouble equated to not existing. If I cried, my dad told me to toughen up. If I was silent, he mocked me for pouting. My mother, Susan, was softer, but in a blurry, entirely useless way. She was physically present but emotionally vacant. She would forget my parent-teacher conferences, but she never missed a single one of Chloe's dance recitals. I do not think they hated me. I think they just did not see me, unless they needed something. When I was 16, I got a part-time job scrubbing grease off the grills at a local diner. I smelled like old frying oil for a year, but I saved every single penny. I had this desperate fantasy of buying a cheap, used Honda Civic and just driving away. One evening, my dad sat me down. He put his heavy hand on my shoulder and used a tone of voice I had never heard from him, soft, pleading. He needed my savings, all of it, to fix a severe leak in the roof. I gave him the money. I wanted to be a good daughter. I wanted him to be proud of me. The roof never got fixed. But exactly 1 month later, Chloe had a massive, catered Sweet 16 party, complete with a professional DJ and a 3-tier cake. When I asked my mother about the money, she looked away and whispered, "Do not ruin your sister's special day, Ava. We are a family. We make sacrifices." That was the day the word family started sounding like a curse word to me. I enlisted in the Coast Guard at 19. No one stopped me. My dad just grunted from the recliner, and my mom cried, but it felt like she was just performing the role of a concerned mother because the neighbors were watching. Chloe did not even look up from her phone. Boot camp was brutal, freezing, and exhausting, but for the first time in my life, the rules made sense. If you worked hard, you were recognized. If you pulled your weight, you mattered. I finally belonged somewhere. Meanwhile, back in California, the cracks in my parents' perfect facade were turning into craters. I found out my dad lost his management job not through a phone call, but because I saw my mom posting a tearful, embarrassing plea on Facebook about hard times. I did what the quiet, responsible daughter always does. I wired them $3,000. I did not even think about it. My dad did not call to say thank you. He just texted, "That covers this month. Let me know when you can send more." And just like that, the trap snapped shut. The water bill, the internet, the property taxes, Chloe's car insurance. There was always a reason, always a heavy sigh from my mother on the phone, always a guilt trip waiting to be deployed. It is just temporary, Ava. You are the only one doing well. Your sister is trying to find herself. Chloe's version of finding herself consisted of working part-time at a boutique and crashing her car. I paid the insurance deductible so she could get a new SUV. The very next week, she posted a photo of herself leaning against the shiny hood on Instagram. The caption read, "When you hustle hard, the universe rewards you." I took a screenshot of that post. I saved it in a folder on my laptop titled Unpaid Debts. For years, I swallowed the resentment. I kept paying. I thought that maybe, if I just gave enough, fixed enough, and sacrificed enough, they would eventually look at me and realize my worth. I thought my money would eventually buy their love. But looking at my phone, at the message telling me I was banned from a Christmas dinner funded by my own bank account, the illusion shattered. They did not love me. They loved what I provided. I closed my banking tabs. The financial cord was officially cut. It would take exactly 3 days for their automatic payments to start bouncing. 3 days before the California House of Cards collapsed. I looked at the non-refundable plane ticket sitting in my inbox. They told me not to come. They made it perfectly clear I was not welcome. I printed the boarding pass anyway. I was going to fly to California, not to their doorstep, not to beg for a plate of dry turkey and a side of humiliation. I was going to fly down there, sit in the shadows, and watch the exact moment they realized the ATM had finally grown a spine. The flight down the West Coast was a blur of turbulent gray clouds giving way to the blinding, artificial sunshine of Southern California. Stepping out of LAX 2 days before Christmas felt like walking onto a movie set. Palm trees were wrapped in flashing red and green lights, and people were walking around in light sweaters, complaining about a 50-degree chill. After months of surviving sub-zero Alaskan blizzards, the air here felt thick, sweet, and entirely fake. Just like the family waiting an hour south in Orange County. Only I was not going to Orange County. At least, not to the front door of the house I was paying for. Instead, I hailed a cab and gave the driver an address to a run-down, functional motel a few miles from my parents' neighborhood. It was the kind of place with peeling paint, paper-thin walls, and a neon vacancy sign that buzzed like an angry hornet. I did not need luxury. I just needed a vantage point, a tactical observation post. I dropped my duffel bag on the floor, locked the deadbolt, and sat on the edge of a mattress that smelled faintly of industrial bleach and old smoke. I opened my laptop and placed my phone right next to it. It was Friday morning, the 23rd of December, the exact day the automated financial system of my family's life was scheduled to pull its monthly harvest from my bank accounts. In the military, we are taught that the most deafening sound on the battlefield is not the explosion. It is the silence right before it. I sat in that cheap motel room, staring at the screen, waiting for the digital detonation. At exactly 9 a.m., the first alert hit my inbox. Payment declined, Southern California Edison. 5 minutes later, another ping. Payment declined, Platinum Auto Insurance. Policyholder, Chloe. And then, the heavy artillery. At 9:30 a.m., a massive red banner appeared on my banking dashboard. Transfer failed, Pacific Coast Mortgage Trust. I leaned back against the cheap headboard and let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for 10 years. The cord was cut. The machine was unplugged. Now, all I had to do was wait for them to notice the lights flickering. It did not take long. At 10:14 a.m., my phone vibrated so hard it rattled against the cheap wooden nightstand. The caller ID flashed my father's name. Richard. I did not answer. I just watched the screen light up the dark room. It rang until it hit voicemail. 2 minutes later, it rang again. My mother, Susan. Again, I let it ring out. The silence in the room was absolute, contrasting violently with the panic I knew was erupting just a few miles down the highway. Then came Chloe. 3 back-to-back calls. I could almost picture her standing at a cash register in some overpriced boutique, her face turning crimson as the cashier handed back her useless platinum card with a sympathetic, humiliating smile. By noon, I had 12 missed calls. Not a single one of them had reached out to me in weeks to ask how the Alaskan winter was, or if I was lonely, or if I was safe during my search and rescue drops. But the second the money stopped flowing, I was suddenly the most important person in their universe. I ordered a greasy burger from a diner next door, brought it back to the room, and ate it while staring out the window at the busy California street. I was officially home for Christmas. I just was not where they could see me. And for the first time in my adult life, I felt an emotion that had been stolen from me a long time ago, absolute control. Around 2 p.m., the tone of the invasion shifted. My phone buzzed again. but this time it was an unknown local number. I let it go to voicemail. When the notification popped up, I put the phone to my ear and hit play. A smooth, practiced, deeply condescending voice filled the speaker. "Ms. Ava, this is Arthur Miller. I am an attorney and a close friend of your parents. I am calling regarding the sudden disruption in the financial arrangements for the family estate. Your father is extremely distressed. You have abruptly pulled your financial support just days before a critical mortgage deadline. This could force them into restructuring or worse, foreclosure. You are causing unnecessary complications for your family. I strongly suggest you return my call immediately before this escalates into a situation you will regret. Complications." I repeated the word out loud in the empty motel room. Complications. They were distressed now. Not when I was wiring them half my paycheck while eating cold rations. Not when I missed my own birthdays, holidays, and entire years of my youth. Not when they made me a punchline at the dinner table. Now, because the bank was knocking, it was a situation I would regret. I did not delete the voicemail. I saved it. It was the perfect piece of evidence. They were trying to use a lawyer to bully me into fulfilling a moral obligation that only went one way. They put soft, professional words on emotional extortion. They called it duty when it was really just a hostage situation. That night, I did not sleep much. I lay in the dark, watching the headlights of passing cars sweep across the ceiling. Around 1 a.m., the text messages started pouring in. The anger had morphed into calculated manipulation. My father texted, "What is wrong with you, Ava? You cannot abandon your family like this. We needed that money." Then my mother, "Your father's blood pressure is through the roof. I have been crying all day. You are destroying our Christmas with this silent treatment." And finally, Chloe, the masterpiece of gaslighting. "You are so bitter. You are literally ruining Mom and Dad's lives just because you are jealous of me. Turn the cards back on, psycho." I picked up the phone. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. Every instinct ingrained in me from childhood screamed at me to fix it, to apologize, to wire the funds, calm the storm, and buy back my place in their good graces. But then I remembered something my drill instructor once told me on a freezing morning during basic training. The silence you hold in the face of an enemy tells them more than any weapon you fire. I set the phone face down on the nightstand. I closed my eyes. I held the silence. And I let them burn. The morning of December 24th arrived with the obnoxiously bright California sun cutting through the thin curtains of my motel room. My phone was no longer just ringing. It was vibrating with a frantic, desperate rhythm. The denial phase was officially over. My family had hit the panic button. I ignored the screen, threw on a dark jacket, and ordered a rideshare. I told the driver to drop me off 2 blocks away from the address on my own bank statements. The neighborhood in Orange County was exactly as I remembered it, only more aggressively festive. Manicured lawns, giant inflatable snowmen, and houses wrapped in thousands of expensive, perfectly synchronized LED lights. It was a community built on appearances, and right in the middle of it sat a beautiful, 2-story colonial home with a pristine white wraparound porch. The house I had been secretly financing for 3 years. I stood on the sidewalk across the street, hidden in the shadow of a massive oak tree, and just watched. Through the large bay window, the living room was fully illuminated. A 12-foot spruce tree stood in the corner, drowning in silver and gold ornaments. I could see my father, Richard, pacing back and forth with his phone pressed to his ear, his face flushed red. My mother, Susan, was sitting on the sofa, dramatically dabbing her eyes with a tissue while sipping wine. Then, a silver SUV pulled into the driveway. The one with the insurance I used to pay for. Chloe stepped out. She was not carrying groceries or practical supplies for a family allegedly on the brink of financial ruin. She was carrying 3 glossy shopping bags from a high-end department store. Someone, likely my father, had maxed out a backup credit card to make sure his golden child did not suffer on Christmas Eve. Watching them through that glass felt like watching a silent movie. There was no missing place setting at the dining table. There was no stocking with my name on the fireplace mantel. The only thing missing from that house was my direct deposit. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. I had 52 unread messages. Instead of reading them, I opened Instagram. Chloe's profile was public, naturally. At the very top of her feed was a brand new photo. It was a picture of the three of them, my mother, my father, and Chloe, smiling brightly in front of that massive Christmas tree. The caption read, "Through thick and thin." Some people forget who fed them when they had nothing, but real loyalty is staying together. Blessed. I stared at the word loyalty. That was the trigger. They wanted to play the victim narrative. They wanted to frame my absence as a cruel abandonment to our extended family and their wealthy, superficial neighbors. They were writing a script where I was the villain, banking on my lifelong habit of staying quiet to protect their reputation. Not anymore. I stood right there on the sidewalk, the cold wind biting my cheeks, and I went to work. I opened Facebook. I created a new photo album. I did not write a long, emotional essay. I did not use curse words or dramatic declarations. I simply titled the album, for clarity. Photo 1. The bank confirmation of the mortgage transfer from my Coast Guard account to Pacific Coast Mortgage Trust, dated every first of the month for the last 36 months. Photo 2. Chloe's auto insurance policy, clearly listing me as the primary payer. Photo 3. A screenshot of my father's text from 2023, reading, "Send 3,000. Do not tell your mother." Photo 4. The text from 48 hours ago. "Christmas is going to be better without you. Do not come." And finally, Photo 5. Chloe's text telling me I made everything awkward. I hit publish. I set the privacy to public. And I tagged them all. Then I turned around, shoved my hands in my pockets, and walked away from the house I bought but could not enter. The fallout was not instantaneous, but when the shockwave hit, it leveled everything. Within 2 hours, my phone was blowing up in an entirely different way. Cousins I had not spoken to in 5 years were sending me direct messages. "Ava, is this real? Did you really pay their mortgage? Aunt Susan told everyone you cut contact because you thought you were too good for us. We had no idea." My mother's Facebook page went completely silent. Chloe deleted her Instagram post within 20 minutes, but not before half our hometown had taken screenshots. My father changed his profile picture to a generic photo of a boat, the ultimate boomer defense mechanism when caught in a lie. At 6:30 p.m., the voicemail indicator flashed again. It was Arthur Miller, the lawyer. But this time, his smooth, condescending tone was completely gone. His voice was tight, anxious, and stripped of all its fake authority. "Ava, this public display is highly inappropriate and legally reckless. Your parents are beside themselves. The extended family is asking questions. We need to stop this bleeding immediately. They want to sit down with you. No shouting, no lawyers present. Just a conversation to fix this before it goes any further. Name the time." I listened to the message twice. They did not want to fix their relationship with their daughter. They wanted to fix their public relations disaster. They wanted to plug the leak in their sinking social status. I typed out a single text message to my father's number. "Tomorrow, Christmas Day, 6 o'clock in the evening. The old diner off Route 66. Public place. You, Mom, and Chloe. Be on time." I did not wait for a reply. I tossed the phone onto the motel bed. Tomorrow, the bill was finally coming due, and I was not going to that meeting alone. I had one more call to make to the only person in our bloodline who actually knew what the word family meant. Christmas Day in Southern California always feels slightly out of place, but the old diner off Route 66 was a masterclass in depressing holiday aesthetics. It was a relic from the 1980s with sticky vinyl booths, flickering fluorescent lights, and a tired waitress pouring burnt coffee. It was exactly what I wanted. A completely neutral, public battleground where my family could not scream without causing a scene. I arrived 20 minutes early. I sat in a corner booth facing the door, ordered a black coffee, and placed a thick, heavy manila folder on the cracked Formica table. I had made one phone call the night before, right after texting my father. I called Uncle Silas. He was my father's older brother, the supposed black sheep of the family. According to my dad, Silas was a failure because he lived in a modest, dusty cabin up in the foothills and drove a 20-year-old truck. But the truth was, Silas was the only honest man in our bloodline. Last year, when he had a severe health scare, my parents did not even send a card. I used my short shore leave to drive up to his cabin, clean his gutters, buy his groceries, and sit by his bed. He never asked me for a single dime. He just asked me how my life was going. I had asked him to meet me here today, not to fight my battles, but to be my witness. At exactly 6 o'clock, the bell above the diner door violently chimed. My family walked in. They looked like they were marching to an execution. My father wore a stiff, heavy jacket, his jaw clenched so tight I thought his teeth might shatter. My mother was clutching her expensive leather handbag to her chest like a shield, her eyes darting nervously around the room. And Chloe? Chloe was wearing massive, dark designer sunglasses indoors, either to hide swollen eyes or just to maintain her ridiculous influencer aesthetic. They slid into the booth opposite me. Nobody said Merry Christmas. Nobody asked how my flight was. My father leaned forward, placing his large hands flat on the table. He skipped the pleasantries. You need to take those posts down right now, Ava. You have humiliated your mother, your sister, and me in front of the entire neighborhood. I took a slow sip of my coffee. I did not humiliate you. You did that yourselves. I just stopped funding the cover-up. My mother's voice cracked, dripping with that fragile, practiced victimhood she had weaponized for decades. We are a family, Ava. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone says things they do not mean when they are stressed. You did not have to air our private business to the world. People are calling us. The church group is whispering. Chloe pushed her sunglasses down the bridge of her nose, glaring at me with pure venom. Do you have any idea what you did to my credit score? My card was declined in front of my friends. You literally ruined my life over a stupid text message. I looked at my 20-year-old sister, wearing a jacket that cost more than my first car, complaining about a declined card while I had been risking my life in freezing oceans to pay for her luxury. I did not ruin your life, Chloe, I said, my voice dangerously calm. I stopped paying for it. There is a massive difference. My father slammed his fist against the table, rattling the coffee cups. We came here to fix this, Ava. If you are just going to sit there and act arrogant, we are done. We need that mortgage transfer reinstated by tomorrow morning, or the bank is going to flag the account. Now, are you going to act like a daughter, or are you going to keep throwing a tantrum? He was still trying to give orders. He was still banking on the quiet, obedient 16-year-old girl who gave him her diner money to fix a phantom roof. I did not raise my voice. I did not need to. I reached out and slid the thick manila folder across the table until it hit my father's hands. What is this? He snapped. Hard copies, I replied, since you all seem to have amnesia. Inside that folder is the bank record of every single dollar I have transferred to you since I was 19 years old. It contains the receipts for Chloe's car, your property taxes, and the utility bills. It also contains the exact timeline of when you claimed you were broke, cross-referenced with photos of your luxury vacations and Chloe's shopping sprees. My mother turned ghostly pale. Chloe sank back into the vinyl booth, pulling her sunglasses back up over her eyes. We never forced you to send that money, my mother whispered, her voice shaking. We never asked for all of it. You are right, I said, leaning in. You did not ask. You expected it. You bled me dry with guilt trips, and then you told me to stay away on Christmas because my presence would ruin the aesthetic of the house I was paying for. My father opened his mouth to shout, his face turning a dangerous shade of purple, but before he could utter a single word, the diner bell chimed again. Heavy, uneven footsteps echoed across the linoleum floor. The steady, rhythmic tap of a wooden cane accompanied them. My father froze. He looked up, and all the color drained from his face. Uncle Silas stood at the edge of our booth. He was wearing an old, faded flannel shirt and a worn-out winter coat, but his eyes were sharp as broken glass. He looked down at his brother with an expression of absolute, unadulterated disgust. Well, Silas said, his voice rough like sandpaper. Looks like the parasites finally ran out of blood to suck. My father scrambled to stand up, knocking his knees against the table. Silas? What are you doing here? This is a private family matter. You do not know the first thing about family, Richard, Silas fired back, not moving an inch. You never did. You have been living like a king on the back of a girl who has been sleeping on a military cot for 10 years. You disgust me. My mother tried to intervene. Silas, please, you do not understand the pressure we have been under. Silas held up a single, weathered hand, silencing her instantly. Save the performance, Susan. I saw the bank statements. Ava showed them to me yesterday. I know exactly what you did to her. He slowly turned his gaze from my terrified parents and locked eyes with me. A gentle, proud smile touched the corners of his mouth. I told you I had your back, kid, Silas said quietly. Then he reached into the inside pocket of his heavy winter coat and pulled out a sealed, legal envelope. He tossed it right on top of my financial binder. Since we are dealing with paperwork today, Silas announced to the table, I figured I should bring some of my own. The heavy legal envelope landed on the table with a soft, definitive thud. For a moment, nobody breathed. The ambient noise of the diner, the clattering plates, the low hum of the neon sign outside seemed to fade into absolute silence. My father stared at the thick white paper like it was a live grenade. What is this, Silas? He demanded, though his voice had lost all its previous thunder. It sounded thin, weak. That, Silas said, leaning his weight onto his wooden cane, is a certified, notarized copy of my updated last will and testament, and a legally binding transfer of deed. My mother's hand fluttered to her throat. Chloe finally took off her oversized sunglasses, her eyes darting frantically between the envelope and our uncle. You always thought I was a failure, Richard, Silas continued, his voice echoing slightly in the quiet corner of the restaurant. You told the whole family I was a broke hermit living in the dirt. You mocked my old truck. You pitted me at Thanksgiving. But while you were taking out second mortgages to buy luxury cars for a daughter who does not even know how to check her own oil, I was investing. My father's jaw went slack. The blood drained completely from his face. What are you talking about? I sold my engineering firm 20 years ago, Richard. I just never felt the need to buy a mansion to prove my worth to a bunch of superficial snobs in Orange County. My land up in the foothills? It is fully paid off. The financial portfolio I have been quietly building for 3 decades, it is worth more than your entire zip code. Chloe gasped. It was an actual unscripted gasp. Her eyes went wide with the sudden, greedy realization that there was massive wealth sitting right across the table. Uncle Silas, Chloe started, her voice suddenly dripping with a sickening, artificial sweetness. We always loved you. We just thought you liked your privacy. Do not speak to me, little girl, Silas snapped, shutting her down so fast she physically recoiled into the booth. I spent a week in the hospital last year with a failing heart. Not one of you called. Not one of you visited. But Ava did. She used her only military leave to fly down here, not to go to the beach, but to scrub my kitchen floor and make sure I was taking my medication. She asked for nothing. She expected nothing. Silas tapped the heavy envelope with a callous finger. So I am leaving her everything. The land, the house, the investments, every single penny. It is all hers. The transfer of the primary deed was finalized yesterday morning. The silence that followed was so heavy it felt suffocating. I sat perfectly still, my hands folded in my lap. I had known Silas was comfortable, but I had absolutely no idea the scale of what he was talking about. Honestly, I did not care about the money. I cared about the vindication. My father erupted. He slammed both hands onto the table and stood up, knocking his coffee cup over. The dark, boiling liquid spilled across the vinyl, soaking right into the manila folder of his own debts. You cannot do that. Richard screamed, completely abandoning his public composure. Heads turned in the diner. Waitresses stopped in their tracks. I am your brother. We are your blood. You cannot leave a fortune to an ungrateful brat who just bankrupted her own parents on Christmas. Silas did not flinch. He looked at his younger brother with eyes as cold as the Alaskan Ocean. She did not bankrupt you, Richard. Your own vanity did. You used your eldest daughter as a shield to protect your fragile ego. And now you have absolutely nothing. No daughter. No brother. And from the looks of that folder soaking up coffee, no house. My mother started sobbing. Real tears this time, not the theatrical ones she used for neighborhood sympathy. They were tears of absolute, unfiltered panic. "Ava, please," she begged, reaching across the table to grab my jacket sleeve. "You cannot let him do this. You have to help us. Where are we going to live?" I looked down at her hand, grabbing my coat. Slowly, deliberately, I pulled my arm away. "You have a highly successful influencer for a daughter," I said, looking directly at Chloe, whose face was completely pale and stained with running mascara. "I am sure she can hustle hard and let the universe reward her with the rent money." I stood up from the booth. I pulled a crisp $20 bill from my wallet and dropped it onto the table to cover my black coffee. "The automated payments are permanently canceled," I said, my voice entirely steady, carrying no anger, only absolute finality. "Do not call my phone again. Do not send your lawyer after me. If you try to contact my command to cause trouble, I will take this soaked folder straight to a military prosecutor and press charges for financial exploitation." I picked up the envelope Silas had thrown on the table. I did not look back at the 3 people sitting in the booth. I did not need to see the devastation on their faces to know it was complete. I walked out the glass doors of the diner, Uncle Silas right beside me, the cool December wind hitting my face. Behind us, the California illusion was burning to the ground, and for the first time in my life, I did not feel the slightest urge to put out the fire. Stepping out of that diner and into the crisp, cool air of the parking lot felt like taking my first real breath in a decade. I walked Uncle Silas to his beat-up, reliable 20-year-old truck. We did not say much. We did not need to. He just put a heavy, calloused hand on my shoulder, gave it a firm squeeze, and drove off into the night. I watched his taillights disappear down Route 66, knowing that for the first time in my life, I actually had a family member who protected me. Fast forward 6 months. It is early summer. I am no longer stationed in the freezing, brutal winters of Alaska. I requested a transfer and was relocated to a Coast Guard station in Northern California. On my weekends, I drive up to the sprawling, forested acreage in the foothills of the Sierra Nevadas. My land. Uncle Silas is still alive and doing incredibly well. He lives in his modest cabin on the east side of the property, completely unbothered by the world. I took over the management of his estate, ensuring his investments are secure and his golden years are completely stress-free. In return, I am building my own small house on the West Ridge, overlooking a valley of ancient pine trees. There are no manicured lawns here. There are no flashy Christmas lights or neighbors peering through the blinds. There is just wind, wood, and absolute peace. As for the house in Orange County, the illusion did not take long to completely shatter. Without my monthly deposits, the mortgage went into default by February. My parents tried to take out another disastrous loan, but with maxed out credit cards and zero actual income, every bank laughed them out of the lobby. The beautiful colonial house with the wraparound porch was foreclosed on and sold by April. I heard through a cousin that Richard and Susan were forced to downsize to a cramped, 2-bedroom apartment in a much less glamorous zip code. They tried to keep up appearances, telling the extended family they simply wanted a more manageable space for their retirement, but nobody bought it. The Facebook photo album I posted had permanently destroyed their social standing. The church group stopped calling. The neighborhood association forgot their names. And Chloe? The universe did indeed reward her hustle. When the bank accounts ran dry and my father could no longer fund her influencer lifestyle, she was forced to sell her designer handbags on the internet just to cover her car payments. Last I heard, she is working 40 hours a week as a barista, wearing an apron instead of platinum jewelry. The lawyer, Arthur Miller, dropped them as clients the exact moment they could not pay his retainer fee. They tried to contact me, of course. For the first 2 months, my phone was bombarded with voicemails swinging wildly between desperate apologies and vicious, bitter insults. I never responded to a single one. Eventually, I changed my number. I hired a military attorney to send a formal cease and desist letter, officially banning them from contacting my command. The silence that followed was not the heavy, anxious silence of waiting for an explosion. It was the clear, refreshing silence of a closed chapter. If you are listening to this right now and you feel a heavy knot in your stomach because parts of my story sound entirely too familiar, I need you to hear this. There is a massive, fundamental difference between loyalty and submission. Loyalty is a two-way street. It is a mutual exchange of respect, care, and protection. Submission is a dead end. Submission is letting people use your bloodline as a chain to keep you tied to their sinking ship. We are conditioned from birth to believe that family is everything, that you must forgive every transgression, cover every debt, and absorb every insult because they are your parents or she is your sister. But genetics do not give anyone a free pass to emotionally and financially destroy you. You cannot save a sinking vessel if the crew is actively drilling holes in the hull. Walking away from my parents and my sister was the hardest, most terrifying decision I ever made. The guilt was blinding at first, but once I pushed through that initial wall of fear, I found a life I actually wanted to live. A life where my money belongs to my future, my time belongs to my peace, and my love is reserved for people who actually value my presence, not just my paycheck. Do not wait 10 years to check your own blind spots. Do not let people who treat you like a background character direct the movie of your life. Set the boundary. Cut the dead weight. Cancel the automatic payments of your emotional energy. You might lose the people you share a last name with, but I promise you, what you gain in return is worth so much more. You gain yourself. Thank you for listening. Stay strong and protect your peace.